y'all know Eva Doyle, she gets called a lot to be in community, right? So she had a conflict, and I said, you know, Dr. Doyle, we'll do this another time. And fortunately, we have an abundance of powerful people in our community, powerful storytellers, people who have seen and done things that we should all be reflecting on and remembering. And in this time, we're going to bring to the stage someone who was a freshman at UB in 1967 when Dr. King is here and is a pillar in our community, Miss Gail Wells. Is that mic working for you?
I think so.
Sounds good.
Oh, okay. So my mic is nice. All right.
Thank you to our union stagehands. We know Dr. King would appreciate that. So, Ms. Gail, you moved here from Harlem in the fall of 1967 to attend UB, but you have a story why you were not here at Kleinhans that night, right?
Yes, I do. Some people could relate to this. I was young and I was foolish. I was very much a revolutionary, though, when I came to Buffalo. I talk about that and I write about that. I said that I was revolutionized in Harlem, but I was racialized in the city of Buffalo. Because when I came here, we called Buffalo, and it wasn't necessarily fair, but we called it the Mississippi of the East. Because I was living somewhat in a bubble in Harlem, because I was in Manhattan. I could easily get on the A train and be anywhere I really wanted to be. And so when they told me this was the second largest city in the state, I feel like somebody was telling me a lie. Because when I got here, I said, what? Because segregation in Buffalo was a lot different than segregation in Harlem or in Manhattan, but the results are the same. I learned that later on, but I came thinking that I was going to see something, and what I experienced was the beginning of white flight. The other thing that I experienced was the othering of UB, which was considered a radical campus with faculty who were left-leaning, and it was a certain politic that they expected from UB students. But to tell you why I didn't go there, at the time, go here on the 10th to hear Dr. King. At the time, UB had a curfew. So you know this is a long time ago. No colleges have curfew. But I didn't meet the curfew the week before. So my punishment was I had to sit desks during the Martin Luther King speech. Now, what's interesting about this is it was delivered by my RA, who happened to be Black, who happened to be a history major like I was at the University of Buffalo. And she really wanted to make this hurt, and so she knew how to do it. Her attitude was on her, you're gonna sit this desk right here and think about whatever you was doing that made you not meet this curfew. And right now, I don't even know what I was doing, but it definitely wasn't as important as seeing Dr. King. But I want you to know that the lesson in all of that happens to be one of the lessons in my life, which is you don't know the consequences of your actions at the moment that you are acting. They usually become apparent when you least expect it. And so I was at a very moving event, maybe about 5 years ago, and it was with the Haudenosaunee, and they were doing an exercise called the blanket exercise. Did anyone ever participate in the blanket exercise? Okay. We're doing the blanket exercise, and I know almost everyone in the room because my previous job, I had Native American Student Services in my area. And you have this blanket which represents land, and you are exchanging dialogue with people on this land. And for some ungodly reason, I don't know, I didn't understand the purpose of the exercise deeply, so I did something that Black people tend to do, which is give too much deference to someone other than looks like you. So the purpose of the exercise was to understand that value of land. I was so generous, and the people that were doing the exercise, they were like waving to me, and they would say, "Gail, no, don't do it." Don't give the land away. And so I realized at that moment the deep lessons that I did not learn, and I began to weep. Because in an inexplicable way, I thought about Dr. King and how I did not follow him. I was very radical. I was a member of SNCC. I was the group that said that he was out of touch, that Black power required us to fight. And I didn't really understand the power of his message until that moment. And I said to myself, and this might sound odd, but I want you to think about this. I said, if Jesus came now, would I be one that would say, crucify him? Out of the sometimes not understanding that those who are willing to give their lives for us are the most pressing human beings on the planet. At the time, I did not know that. I minimized his, when he passed, everybody cried. But let me tell you something. Tears mean nothing if there's not actions that back it up. So many of us was crying because at that moment we knew we lost a great man. It wasn't necessarily that we agreed with his philosophy. The reason I cried at that blanket exercise is that was the moment when I understood his philosophy. And I felt it in my heart and in my bones. So Dr. King is a metaphor for all of us, in my estimation. Because even if you didn't know him, and I say that you can know him by reading what he wrote. That's the only way to know him. That letter that he sent from jail to all of the clergy, the fact that when he passed, he was at his most, in his darkest moments. Most of America, including Black people, thought he was ineffective. They thought that he had not done as much as people thought he had done, and so I'm going to give you another lesson that I learned in my life, is we seek perfection, and it's more important than commitment. But commitment is definitely more important than perfection, because no one is perfect. Nobody is perfect.
Appreciate that perspective.
That's a long opening.
Beautiful.
And I'm taking some of it back. But that's the way I'm feeling today.
I really appreciate that, because I've recently sort of adjusted something that I say often, and actually I think I had to do it on stage tonight here, is saying that Dr. King himself is a North Star for me, and we have to realize that we cannot deify a human. He was a human, he was flawed, he was steeped in patriarchy, he had moments of expressed homophobia, he had infidelity in his life. He is a human. It's his lessons, it's his teachings that we should be focused on and grant him his humanity. And I know that in the 57 years since then, I hope there's a book about you that maybe you write yourself someday, Ms. Gail, but it would take us all night to trace your trails and the amazing work you've done in this community. If you may, I would love to bring it to the present. You know, we have so many great people from the community here who have tables. I want to thank all of our food providers as well, and we have interactive art that we can do in the corners here. And also our friends from the Partnership for the Public Good here who have a policy agenda that relates to maybe the most notorious work you're doing now. When you talk about the land, can you express to us what Freedom Gardens are, and in closing, give us a way to get involved?
Buffalo Freedom Gardens is a program that was developed as a result of COVID. And if you remember, and I know many of you do, you were restricted in your movement, right? And so I am a gardener. I love gardening. I love life. I love nature. I'm a tree hugger, all of that. And I am a master gardener for Erie County. And so we have to do volunteer work, and I was volunteering in community gardens, but the community gardens were closed. And so I had someone come to me and ask me if I would be willing to do a home grow program, because I had been talking to them about that, and they said, well, I think the time is now for you to do a home grow program. You can't get into any gardens. So what we did with a number of people in the east side of Buffalo is we identified all of the areas in the city where there was the largest COVID results in terms of percentage of people who had lost their lives and the percentage of people who had COVID. And so we started there, and we gave out raised beds, elevated beds for seniors, and what we call earth boxes for people that had that were living in apartment buildings, and we gave them everything they needed for a garden. We had people build the beds. We actually delivered the soil to their homes. We put the soil in their boxes. It's a lot of soil to fill up the beds that we had. And we gave them organic seeds and organic seedlings so that they could have their garden. That first year, we had 50 gardens, but 339 people applied for those 50 gardens. So then I knew that this is something that needed to carry on beyond a year. So I've done that for like 3 years. There's 150 gardeners, and I did it off of the backs of people like India Walton, people that are in this audience, people that give freely of their time and their effort. And this year, I am putting in a food forest garden in the JFK Park. So I feel like I'm blessed. The JFK Park is in the Ellicott District. It is not far from the Michigan Street African American Heritage Corridor. It's in a district that when I came to Buffalo was predominantly black. This is where black people lived, in the Ellicott District. And it's on Pine Street, right across from the Montessori School, right next to the Town Gardens housing, next to where I live, at Compass East, which used to be the only black hospital in the city of Buffalo. So some of you will know where this neighborhood is. 2 or 3 blocks from where William Wells Brown had his house, and Mary Talbert lived down there. So this is the neighborhood where you had all of the churches and everything. It is an amazing neighborhood, and that JFK Park is right there. We are going to start the garden, the installation, this year. So let me tell you, we are giving away fruit trees and nut trees. And when I say giving away, I want you to know we think of you give a man a fish or you teach him how to fish. Well, we're giving them the fish and we're teaching them how to fish at the same time. So that is what we're doing, and I'm very excited about that.
Yes, indeed. So I encourage everybody to look up Buffalo Freedom Gardens, look up Miss Gail Wells, and let's get involved. And when I mentioned Partnership for the Public Good, that's one of their policy planks. Always, every year, is food access is so important in this community. We have learned these lessons the hard way over and over. We know so many are struggling. Give a man a fish, and he'll eat for a day. Teach him how to fish, and he'll eat forever. That reminds me of an Arrested Development song. I'll tell you what, we're going to play some Arrested Development tonight, but first, we want to thank Miss Gail Wells for taking us there. You want to take us there? Reconnector Band, Miss Gail Wells.